When you're sketching an angle that's measured in radians, you're going to do this the same way you did when we sketched angles measured in degrees. We're going to begin from the positive x-axis, which is right there, and we're going to rotate counterclockwise for an angle that's positive, or we're going to rotate clockwise for an angle that's negative. What makes this tricky, though, is that we're working with radians. So A, we're kind of unfamiliar with radians, and B, they're often in fractions, which we hate. So I'll give you a few pieces of advice for sketching these. One way, I guess what you could do is you could convert all these into degrees. I showed you how to do that, and then just sketch the angle using what you know about degrees. But let's try to avoid that if we can, although if you need to, you certainly could do it that way. I've gone ahead and on my circle, I've already labeled the four, we call them quadrantal angles, around the outside of the circle. So 90 degrees is pi over 2. 180 degrees is pi radians, 270 down here on the bottom is 3 pi over 2, and then 2 pi gets me back all the way home, or 360 degrees. So I'm going to start with that. Also, if the fractions really bother you, remember we could change this into 0.5 pi. That's the same thing as pi over 2. And then down at the bottom, we can convert that to 1.5 pi. All right, so here's what I like to do. I really don't like fractions, just like you guys. So what I do is I first take 5/4 and just make that into a decimal. 5/4 is 1.25. And then I'll throw the pi symbol on there. So to help me figure out where this is going to go, it's positive, so I know I'm rotating counterclockwise. I can see on my my graph over here, pi is halfway around, and then 1.5 pi is down here. Well, I'm past 1, but I'm not quite to 1.5. In fact, I'm right there in between those. So my angle is going to end up somewhere over here. Remember, we're just doing a sketch. What I want to make sure I include, though, is that rotation angle, so I know where you started rotating from and which direction I moved. So that's where 5 pi over 4 radians is going to be located, okay? Again, I'm going to erase each time. If you guys want to do these as separate graphs, that probably would be better than doing them all in the same spot. Okay, next up I've got 9 pi. Well, just like when we had an angle over 360, I'm going to divide to figure out how many full revolutions I'm doing. A full revolution in radians is 2 pi. So 9 pi divided by 2 pi, if I think of it that way, means I can get around the circle 4 complete times. I can get 4 revolutions around the circle, because 4 times 2 pi is 8 pi. In addition to that, I still have 1 pi left over, which is equivalent to half a rotation. So in other words, I'm going to spin around this circle 4 complete times. There's 2 pi, there's 4 pi, there's 6 pi, and there's 8 pi. I have 1 more pi to go, so if I go 1 more pi, that gets me halfway around, so I end up over here on the x-axis, okay? So 4 complete times, because that's 2 pi, 4 pi, 6 pi, 8 pi, and then I want 1 more pi, which is over here, okay? Fun, right? I can almost hear you groaning at home. Next up, I have 1 more to do. This time I have a negative angle. Well, I still begin in the same spot. I still begin on the positive x-axis. All that a negative angle tells me to do is rotate backwards. So if I think about it, this down here is negative 0.5 pi. This over here is negative 1 pi. This up here is negative 1.5 pi. And then all the way around would be negative 2 pi. So again, I really don't like the fraction part. So rather than, I don't want to convert all the way to degrees, although I could. I just want to make negative 8/15 into a fraction. So using a calculator, I see that that's negative 0.53 repeating, and then I'll put the pi symbol on there. That's just 8 divided by 15. Don't type in 8 pi divided by 15, you're going to lose the pi symbol. So what this tells me then is I have to go a little bit past negative 0.5 on my graph. Well, good news, I know where negative 0.5 pi is. It's down here. And so if I want to rotate just a little bit further than that to get to negative 0.53, I'm going to end up somewhere over here in quadrant 3. So again, I'm going to draw that ray in there, and then I'm going to show my rotation to show where I started and which way I rotated. That's where negative 8 pi over 15 would be located.